My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 33 years old. And last Friday, I found out my entire life had been quietly handed over to someone else. The company I built, the mission I dedicated myself to, the long nights, the missed holidays, the dreams I put on hold for someday. That someday never came. Because while I was too busy working to notice, my father signed it all away to my sister. Before I share how I found out and what I did about it, let me ask you something. Have you ever given your entire self to something, only to be told you were never really part of it? If that feeling is familiar, you might want to hear the rest of my story. It changed everything for me. I was practically raised in a lab. When other kids were outside riding bikes, I was in our family's garage helping my father solder prototype circuits for his first biotech monitor. I was 9. By the time I was 13, I could explain blood glucose algorithms better than most grad students. While Vanessa, my older sister, was off getting lead roles in school plays or sneaking out to parties, I was running sample reports and annotating spreadsheets for Dad's quarterly investor updates. It wasn't punishment. I loved it. He used to pat my shoulder after late nights in the lab and say, "You're the one who'll carry this, Clara. Your mind, your focus, it's a gift. You're going to take Bennett Biosystems further than I ever could." I believed him. More than that, I shaped my entire identity around that promise. College was never a debate. I enrolled early at Stanford, double majored in biomedical engineering and data science. While my peers were backpacking across Europe or partying during spring break, I was in a clinical lab developing real-time monitoring code for cancer detection prototypes. I graduated summa cum laude at 21, turned down offers from major firms and went straight home. To help grow our company, I didn't even take a week off. For the next 12 years, I was the engine behind Bennett Biosystems' rise. I spearheaded our transition from analog monitors to remote diagnostics, integrated machine learning into patient recovery metrics, secured 2 rounds of grant funding, and negotiated our landmark $20 million partnership with the Whitaker Hospital Network. The day that contract was signed, Dad toasted with champagne. "To my brilliant daughter," he said proudly, "the real heart of Bennett Biosystems." I should have known better than to believe words without actions. Vanessa returned home 2 years ago. She was 35 then, after a high-profile burnout in New York's PR scene and 2 broken engagements. She came back looking for a fresh start. I was skeptical, but polite. To my surprise, she expressed interest in helping with our branding strategy. Dad created a role for her, communications director. It sounded official, but I knew she didn't understand our work. She sat in on meetings, nodded along, made sleek pitch decks. She brought flowers to the lab and posted selfies from our events. The staff adored her. I tried not to care. I was too busy working 70 to 80-hour weeks, coordinating FDA approvals and triaging supply chain issues during the pandemic. We weren't equals. Everyone knew that. Or so I thought. Now I know the truth. While I was updating clinical databases at 3 a.m. and skipping Thanksgiving dinners to meet federal compliance deadlines, my family was having meetings without me. And what they decided, what they signed, would leave me questioning everything I'd ever believed. But I'll tell you what, that betrayal didn't break me. It woke me up. And what I did next? Well, let's just say, they'll never underestimate me again. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 33 years old. And last Friday, I found out my entire life had been quietly handed over to someone else. The company I built, the mission I dedicated myself to, the long nights, the missed holidays, the dreams I put on hold for someday. That someday never came. Because while I was too busy working to notice, my father signed it all away to my sister. Before I share how I found out and what I did about it, let me ask you something. Have you ever given your entire self to something, only to be told you were never really part of it? If that feeling is familiar, you might want to hear the rest of my story. It changed everything for me. I was practically raised in a lab. When other kids were outside riding bikes, I was in our family's garage helping my father solder prototype circuits for his first biotech monitor. I was 9. By the time I was 13, I could explain blood glucose algorithms better than most grad students. While Vanessa, my older sister, was off getting lead roles in school plays or sneaking out to parties, I was running sample reports and annotating spreadsheets for Dad's quarterly investor updates. It wasn't punishment. I loved it. He used to pat my shoulder after late nights in the lab and say, "You're the one who'll carry this, Clara. Your mind, your focus, it's a gift. You're going to take Bennett Biosystems further than I ever could." I believed him. More than that, I shaped my entire identity around that promise. College was never a debate. I enrolled early at Stanford, double majored in biomedical engineering and data science. While my peers were backpacking across Europe or partying during spring break, I was in a clinical lab developing real-time monitoring code for cancer detection prototypes. I graduated summa cum laude at 21, turned down offers from major firms, and went straight home to help grow our company. I didn't even take a week off. For the next 12 years, I was the engine behind Bennett Biosystems' rise. I spearheaded our transition from analog monitors to remote diagnostics, integrated machine learning into patient recovery metrics, secured 2 rounds of grant funding, and negotiated our landmark $20 million partnership with the Whitaker Hospital Network. The day that contract was signed, Dad toasted with champagne. "To my brilliant daughter," he said proudly. "The real heart of Bennett Biosystems." I should have known better than to believe words without actions. Vanessa returned home 2 years ago. She was 35 then. After a high-profile burnout in New York's PR scene and 2 broken engagements, she came back looking for a fresh start. I was skeptical but polite. To my surprise, she expressed interest in helping with our branding strategy. Dad created a role for her, communications director. It sounded official, but I knew she didn't understand our work. She sat in on meetings, nodded along, made sleek pitch decks. She brought flowers to the lab and posted selfies from our events. The staff adored her. I tried not to care. I was too busy working 70 to 80-hour weeks, coordinating FDA approvals and triaging supply chain issues during the pandemic. We weren't equals. Everyone knew that. Or so I thought. Now I know the truth. While I was updating clinical databases at 3 in the morning and skipping Thanksgiving dinners to meet federal compliance deadlines, my family was having meetings without me. And what they decided, what they signed, would leave me questioning everything I'd ever believed. But I'll tell you what, that betrayal didn't break me. It woke me up. And what I did next? Well, let's just say, they'll never underestimate me again. It happened late on a Friday afternoon, the kind of day that drags endlessly with back-to-back meetings and a dozen unanswered emails. I was combing through our digital archive, trying to locate original research documentation for a patent extension we were filing. One of Vanessa's recent branding refresh initiatives had scrambled our once orderly file system into something that looked more like a Pinterest board than a compliance-ready database. I muttered under my breath as I clicked through folder after folder. Then I saw it. Buried inside a misnamed directory titled Archive Spring Review, there was a scanned PDF with the title Bennett Biosystems Ownership Restructure. My fingers froze over the trackpad. I wasn't sure why I clicked it. Some instinct. Some flicker of dread. The moment the document opened, the world around me seemed to blur. It was dated March 15th of the current year, just 6 months ago. The ink still looked fresh. My eyes scanned the paragraphs, heart hammering faster with each line. Transference of 70% ownership to Vanessa Marie Bennett, remaining 30% retained by Gregory and Joanne Bennett, jointly. There was no mention of my name, not even a clause, not even a footnote. My throat went dry. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake. An old draft, a template. But the signatures were there. My father's, my mother's, even Vanessa's. Dated, notarized. I must have been holding my breath because when I finally exhaled, it came out in a shudder. I stood so quickly that my chair rolled back and hit the filing cabinet behind me. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk just to stay upright. "Clara, you all right?" It was Miriam, our lab coordinator. She'd worked at the company longer than I had. Her voice was tentative, concerned. I turned to her slowly, holding up the document with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. "Did you know about this?" I asked, my voice cracked. Her expression shifted instantly, from concern to something closer to guilt. She looked down at her shoes. "Your dad said he'd tell you, when the time was right." 6 months. 6 months of board meetings, product launches, Trials, business as usual. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. I left without saying another word, the printed contract clutched in my hand like it might disappear if I let go. I didn't even grab my laptop. What did it matter? None of it belonged to me. The drive home was a blur of red lights and wet eyes. Every memory I had of working late, sleeping in the lab, defending our mission in front of investors who wanted us to pivot to cosmetic tech, it all ran through my mind like a cruel film reel. And all of it had been a lie, a performance. They had already made their decision. While I was giving everything, they were preparing to cut me out. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in silence, staring at the printed contract until the sun went down. Then I called the one person who would understand. "Layla," I whispered when she answered. "They gave it to Vanessa. They gave it all away. And they didn't tell me." I didn't have to explain who they were. She knew. "Stay where you are," she said without hesitation. "I'm coming over." I didn't even cry until she walked through my door 20 minutes later and wrapped her arms around me. Then I broke. Not because of the company, not even because of the betrayal. I broke because I finally realized the truth. I had never really been part of the family. I was just the workhorse, the engine. And when the product was ready for delivery, they handed the keys to someone else. Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours since Friday. Layla had stayed the night on my couch, made tea I didn't drink, and offered practical advice I was too numb to absorb. On Saturday afternoon, I told her I needed to be alone. I wasn't ready to tell her what I was planning. Not yet. Dinner was always at 6. Always at the same house with the same pot roast. The same table where my father had once toasted my promotion to senior innovation lead, telling a room full of advisors that I was the company's future. I arrived at 5:59. Vanessa answered the door. She was smiling. "You made it. I wasn't sure you would." I said nothing. Just walked past her into the familiar hallway, still smelling of lemon polish and old ambition. My mother called from the kitchen, cheerful as ever. "Clara, perfect timing. Your father just opened the wine." I sat at the table like a guest in someone else's home. Vanessa poured water. My father reviewed some documents at the head of the table. I noticed they were project briefs. She was already taking my place. The three of them chatted about expansion plans, branding strategies, and a new partnership proposal I hadn't been told about. They spoke like everything was normal, like nothing had changed. I stayed quiet, listening, memorizing. Dinner was slow. I barely touched the roast. The apple tart Vanessa brought from the new French bakery downtown got more compliments than any of my regulatory wins ever had. I waited until the plates were cleared, until the glasses were half full, until my mother was leaning back, finally relaxed. Then I placed the contract on the table. The room went silent. My father looked at it and froze. Vanessa's smile faded instantly. My mother reached for her napkin as if she could disappear behind it. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked. No one answered. "Did you think I'd never find out? That I'd keep showing up to do the work while she," I gestured toward Vanessa, "signs the deals and gives the interviews?" My father cleared his throat, business mode activating. "Clara, let's not make a scene." "A scene?" I laughed, but it was empty. "You already made one. I'm just catching up to the plot." Joanne tried to reach for my hand. I pulled away. "We were going to tell you," she whispered. "We just didn't want to upset you before the Whitaker review." "The Whitaker review happened 4 months ago. It wasn't personal," my father said. "Vanessa has a skill set we need. Her media background, her network, her media background," I repeated. "You mean her Instagram followers? Her network of failed startups and ex-boyfriends?" "Clara," Vanessa started. "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't pretend you didn't know what you were taking. You signed the papers, you took the title. You sat in the chair I earned." "I never asked for control," she said quickly. "Dad said you wouldn't want it, that you preferred running things behind the scenes." I looked at my father. "You told her that?" He didn't deny it. "You built this company," he said. "But leadership is more than just numbers and formulas. It's about vision, communication, charisma." "And I suppose I don't have that," I said. Even after I negotiated our largest deal, saved our funding round, and doubled our client retention. We needed a new face, he said simply. I stood, voice shaking but steady. Then let her deal with what's coming next. Because I'm done. I won't build someone else's empire while you smile for the cameras. Clara, be reasonable, my mother pleaded. This company is your legacy too. Not anymore, I said. You made that clear when you put her name on everything and left mine out. You're still part of the team, Vanessa offered. We need you. No, I said coldly. You need my brain, my effort, my contacts, but not me. And I won't keep showing up to be tolerated. If Vanessa owns it, let her run it. My father stood. You're walking out? You'd let the company collapse out of spite? I'm walking out because you already collapsed everything that mattered. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. My hands were shaking, but I didn't look back. When I opened it, the cool night air hit me like freedom. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice break. I heard my father slam a glass down. I heard Vanessa call after me, but I kept walking. They'd made their decision, now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat on my balcony in an old hoodie and watched the city lights blur into sunrise. My phone buzzed with messages. My mother sent a heart emoji. Vanessa asked if we could talk. My father didn't text at all. By morning, I had made 2 decisions. 1, I wasn't going back. 2, I was going to take back my life. I made coffee but didn't drink it. I pulled my laptop from its bag and started documenting everything. Not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. Every project I had led, every clinical trial I'd designed, every strategy I'd implemented, I made a spreadsheet so detailed it would make our CFO weep. I didn't include company property or anything proprietary, but I did highlight the innovations I introduced, the systems I designed, the efficiencies I built that had no official documentation anywhere but my head. I backed it all up twice, then I emailed my formal resignation. I kept it short, professional, no emotion. I was exercising my right to take the 6 weeks of vacation I'd never used, effective immediately. I thanked them for the opportunity. I did not wish them well. I activated my out-of-office reply. I included Vanessa's contact info for anything urgent. Then I turned off my work phone and dropped it into a drawer. The silence was deafening. That afternoon, I called Dr. Layla Torres. She picked up on the first ring. I was waiting for this, she said. Are you all right? Not really, but I'm getting there. I told her everything. When I finished, she said only one thing. Good. Now let's get to work. By the next morning, I had a meeting scheduled with her team at Aurora Biologic. I wasn't sure I wanted to leave the medtech world behind, but I needed to remember I had options. The next few days were strange. No alarms, no deadlines. I went for walks in the park I used to drive past every day on the way to the lab. I made actual breakfasts. I took a yoga class. I even finished a book that had been sitting on my shelf for 3 years. But in the quiet, the ache crept back in. I hadn't just lost a job. I had lost the future I'd been promised since I was a child. I had believed that legacy meant loyalty, that hard work meant security. I had believed in them, until they didn't believe in me. On day 5, I got a text from Miriam, the lab coordinator. Dr. Whitaker's team keeps asking for you. Vanessa's lost. Greg is panicking. I didn't reply. The next morning, the call came. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then I listened to the voicemail. Clara, it's Dr. Whitaker. I know you're on leave, but I need to speak with you directly. Vanessa doesn't have your knowledge of the integration requirements. She's delaying decisions we can't afford to stall. We're weeks away from implementation. Call me. I played the message 3 times. It was the first time in days I had felt needed, but I didn't call him back. Not yet. That evening, my father called. I didn't answer. The next morning, he tried again. And this time, I picked up. Clara, he said, we need to talk. No, I said. You need to listen. He fell silent. Dr. Whitaker is threatening to pull funding, he finally admitted. Vanessa isn't ready, you know that. Come back, help us fix this. I stared at the same ceiling I'd stared at every morning for a decade before rushing off to save their legacy. No, I said. Let her fix it. She owns it. I hung up. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. 3 days after that call, I got a message from Dr. Whitaker's executive assistant. It was brief. He's moving the prototype deadline up by 2 weeks. Vanessa hasn't responded to his last 2 emails. He's not happy. Neither was the procurement team, or the compliance officer, or the clinical trial site coordinators who were now reaching out directly to my personal email, hoping I'd intervene. I didn't. But I watched, and I waited. By Friday, the first public signs of distress emerged. A trade journal I followed published a piece on leadership shifts at Bennett Biosystems, citing internal misalignment and strategic delays, as reasons Whitaker Health Systems was rumored to be reevaluating its investment. My phone lit up minutes later. It was my father. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You've made your point," he snapped. "The company's in trouble. Whitaker wants answers and Vanessa can't give them. You need to come back in." I stayed calm. "I don't work there anymore." "Clara," he said, lowering his voice, "be serious. This is your legacy." "No," I said, "you signed that away." He went silent. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Less force, more fear. "What do you want?" There it was. I had waited years to be asked that question. I didn't hesitate. 40% ownership, board seat, equal voting rights, chief innovation officer, and a mandatory cap on executive work hours. He scoffed. "You can't be serious. Vanessa owns 70%. She can sell, or you and Mom can transfer part of your 30. "That's not how we do things," he snapped. "Maybe it should be." I let that hang, then added, "I've already met with Aurora Biologic. They're offering me a lab, a team, and a profit share, and Dr. Whitaker told me he'd follow me." The silence that followed was pure electricity. "You wouldn't," he said. "I haven't," I replied. "Yet." I gave him 2 days. By then, either we'd be business partners or competitors. My phone didn't ring that night, or the next morning. Not even a text. They were calculating, weighing loss against pride. I knew my father well enough to recognize the pattern. When he didn't call by the end of day 1, I booked a formal meeting with Aurora Biologic for Monday morning, just in case. On Sunday evening, the phone lit up. His name on the screen. "We'd like to meet tomorrow," he said. "Noon, Riverfront Cafe, neutral ground. All of us." I agreed, but I didn't thank him. The next morning, I dressed with precision. Power suit, clean lines, subtle makeup, hair in a sleek ponytail, every detail calculated for presence, not to impress them, to remind myself of who I was. When I walked into the cafe, they were already seated. My father looked older than I remembered. Vanessa looked tired. My mother smiled nervously. A leather folio lay open in front of Harold Peterson, our longtime family attorney. "We're here to talk options," my father said. "Good," I replied. "Let's begin." But before he could speak, Vanessa looked at me. "I'm sorry, Clara. I should have told you. I didn't know Dad promised the company to you when we were kids. I thought he had a plan." "You signed your name to 70%, I said. "That's not an accident. He told me you didn't want ownership, that you preferred being in control without the spotlight." I stared at my father. "Did you say that?" He didn't deny it. He didn't even look at me. My mother cleared her throat. "We thought we were protecting you, Clara. You're so driven, we didn't want the business side to burn you out." "I've been burning out for years. You just weren't looking." Harold interrupted. "If we may, I've prepared a few options based on your conversation with Gregory. Transfer structures, board roles, voting procedures." We went through them one by one. I rejected the first offer, 20% and no seat. Insulting. The second was closer, 30% with co-signatory rights. But not enough. Then Vanessa did something I didn't expect. She pushed her folder aside and said, "Give her 35 from my share." Everyone turned to her. I never wanted to run the company. I just wanted to be part of it. "You were right, Clara. You built this. I've been pretending, and it's exhausting. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Not forgiveness, but recognition. We spent the next hour finalizing the terms. I would hold 35%. My parents kept 30. Vanessa retained 35. All major decisions would require majority board vote. I'd take the title of Chief Innovation Officer. Vanessa would remain CEO, but shift her focus to public relations and client development. My father would step into an advisory role, quietly, permanently. We all signed a letter of intent. The real contracts would come later. But that signature, it meant something. It meant I had a voice, power, presence. As we stood to leave, Vanessa stopped me. Can we talk? Just us? I hesitated, then nodded. We stepped out onto the river walk, quiet but tense. I'm not your enemy, she said. You're not my partner either. Not yet. Fair. She pulled her scarf tighter. I'm not good at the operational stuff. You always made it look easy. It wasn't. I just worked harder than everyone else. I know. That's why I gave you the shares. I don't want to fake it anymore. I didn't reply, but I didn't walk away either. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was a start. I didn't go back to the office right away. I needed space, time, and silence. For the first time in years, I took a full week off. I booked a last-minute solo retreat at a quiet beachfront resort 2 hours from the city. No laptops, no lab coats, no deadlines, just books, ocean air, and room to think. When I returned the following Monday, the first thing I noticed wasn't the new title outside my office door. It was the energy. The hallway that had once been frantic and pressured now felt lighter. I walked past coworkers who used to avoid eye contact, now smiling with cautious hope. My new office wasn't the corner suite. I didn't want it. Instead, I chose a bright room on the second floor, overlooking the river, with space for both a whiteboard wall and a small seating area. I hung up the framed patents I'd quietly led for years. I left the desk clutter-free. Vanessa stopped by my second day back. She brought coffee. I didn't comment on the fact that she got my exact order right. How's it feel, she asked. Strange, I said. Like I'm walking into a place I already know, but everything's moved slightly to the left. She smiled, a little sheepish. We've been running around without a map for 6 months. Now that you're back, maybe we can redraw it together. Time would tell. We started slow. Weekly joint meetings. She handled client strategy. I managed development. We aligned our teams, redefined reporting structures, introduced project caps and flexible scheduling. I implemented a rule that no executive could send emails past 7 p.m. Vanessa added a weekly spotlight celebrating behind-the-scenes staff contributions. The company didn't collapse. It got better. And so did we. My father kept his word. He took a step back, showed up to board meetings, offered advice when asked. Mostly, he stayed quiet. And slowly, I realized he was watching, studying, and maybe, just maybe learning something. On a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks into our new structure, Dr. Whitaker called. I just had a meeting with Vanessa, he said. You've clearly been coaching her. I smiled. Something like that. He paused. I still want you as our primary contact. You'll get both of us, but I'll personally oversee the integration. That's all I needed to hear. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. The skyline hadn't changed, but I had. That evening, I left the office at 6 sharp. No guilt, no email refresh, no second thoughts. I had dinner plans with someone new. Someone who had asked me out months ago. But I had always been too buried in crisis to say yes. Nathan Rivera, a medical engineer from one of our partner firms. Kind, smart, quietly funny. We met at the Whitaker Symposium 3 years ago. I never noticed then how easy he was to talk to. Now I did. We met at a quiet bistro across town. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in years. Lipstick, too. You seem different, he said after we ordered. I feel different. In a good way? In the only way that matters. After dinner, he walked me to my car. We stood there for a moment, the city soft around us. You stood up for yourself, Clara. That takes something most people don't have. I looked at him. I didn't know I had it either. But now I did. 1 month later, I stood at the front of the conference room beside Vanessa as we delivered our first joint quarterly presentation to the board. It was polished, data-driven, and visually engaging. My part broke down our operational wins, efficiency gains, and upcoming research pipeline. Vanessa's section walked through new partnerships, media coverage, and our latest outreach campaign. For the first time in years, I felt aligned. Not just with the company, with myself. When the presentation ended, the room was silent for a moment, then applause. Not out of obligation, out of respect. My father stayed seated, watching. He didn't speak until everyone else had left. "You were right," he said simply. About the hours, about the leadership, about what this company needed. I nodded. I know. He looked down at the notepad in front of him. I should have seen it sooner. I thought of every night I stayed in the lab until 2 a.m. Every weekend I worked through illness. Every milestone I hit alone because he was out of town or too focused on the next pitch. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was enough. "We're here now," I said. "Let's build from that." In the months that followed, the company grew stronger. Our new model attracted fresh talent, especially women who had once shied away from the demanding, thankless culture that used to define us. Projects ran more smoothly. Burnout declined. Clients trusted us more. Internally, people felt seen. Vanessa and I found a rhythm. We weren't best friends, but we were good partners. She learned to ask questions. I learned to give her space to try. And when she failed, she owned it. That mattered more than getting it right the first time. One afternoon, as we wrapped up a planning session, Vanessa said something I never expected. "I'm glad Dad screwed up." I raised an eyebrow. If he hadn't, I think we'd both still be pretending. I'd be the charming front with no depth. You'd still be working 80 hours a week for a seat no one planned to give you. She was right. Sometimes what breaks you open is the very thing that sets you free. That weekend, I joined a book club. I adopted a rescue dog I named Orbit. I visited my college roommate and sat on her porch for hours talking about nothing important. I stopped checking my inbox before sunrise. I slept in on Sundays. I even painted again. Just for fun. Just for me. At the end of that quarter, I took a full week off. No laptop, no check-ins, just a cabin by the lake and a pile of unread novels. And when I returned, the company hadn't collapsed. That might have been the most healing moment of all. I had built something sustainable, shared, balanced, real. On a quiet evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights dance on the river below. Nathan texted, asking about dinner. I smiled, heart steady. For the first time in a decade, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. I already had it. Not just in the company, in my own life.